because I don't really know much about Harvey Weinstein or like whatever production, business that he ran,
Yeah, yeah.
and or even how that's even run. So, I mean, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Start with that. So what we're talking about is a man who was good at two things.
Mm.
He was good at gathering financing from people who would back his films, and he was really good at networking within the artistic community to get the right directors, right script writers, the right actors together, and he sort of managed to merge both worlds. In many ways, he is the one who kickstarted Quentin Tarantino's career,
Right. Okay.
and he was really, really good at those things. But here's the thing with someone who's really, really good at these things is that very quickly that power goes to your head.
Right. Right. Right.
And then what happens is you begin to believe in your own hype, and then you begin to believe you're infallible.
Mm.
And of course, where you want to exert that power or over people who have a difficulty in saying no, because you never know when your next job is going to come.
Yeah.
And that very often comes from the creatives.
Mm.
And so what he would then do is, as the news has gone on to expose, is he would exploit a lot of actresses for his own sort of devious sexual like misgivings and desires, which is in many ways so terribly, terribly fucked up.
Yeah.
And rightly so, he's been exposed for the fiend that he is. And it's weird because I think when it came out, it was end 2017, I think, and then it was a big deal, started the Me Too movement. But after about 6 or 9 months, it's just sort of gone dead quiet about Harvey Weinstein. And then and then I think last week or so, he made an appearance at I don't know if you read this, at an actor's benefit, and basically it's sort of like a speakeasy for actors in New York City where actors can do poetry, they can do scenes, they can do all sorts of things, and the whole idea is to raise money for I think it was for a theater company if I'm not mistaken, and within the audience is Harvey Weinstein, and what happens is the host for the night and one of the performers for the night, they're fully aware that Harvey Weinstein's in the room. They're fully and they're both women. One of them, I believe, was a victim of rape, and the host tries to call it out, and then she gets booed by people in the audience.
Fuck, why?
Boo, you shouldn't be bringing him up. Like, shut up, just do your fucking job.
Right.
And she's like, I'm pretty sure he's a rapist in the audience. Why are we allowing this man to be here in this sacred, safe space? Because this space is, to the best of my knowledge, was known as sort of a quiet, secret place for artists to help artists, support artists. I believe the fund was for artists who are in need or in some sort of financial trouble,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so
It's the exact opposite.
exact opposite of why you would have someone like Harvey Weinstein audience. And then later on, there's a comedian that comes on, and then she put this whole big missive on Facebook about how she was a survivor of rape, and part of her shtick or her set was to call out the giant Jewish elephant in the room.
Right.
And again, she gets booed. She gets told by other people in the audience, "You need to leave. I'm sorry, you can't talk about him. Like that's just off. That's off brand, off topic.
Wow.
Get out."
Is that him exerting his power again, like in that community, or
it's not him exerting his power, because all the photos and all the footage of him at this event is him being very quiet in the corner. It's not him exerting power, it's the legacy of the power that he has, or the fear that he still has enough control and enough people under his thumb where you don't want to fall into the wrong side. You know what I mean? You don't want to, you fear the consequences of not being on his side.
right?
And so what happens is, just by the sheer presence of him in the room, people feel like, I've got to be mindful that he's there because he's still a big, important man to a degree. Even though he's been stripped of all his titles, he's been stripped of all his credentials, he's done enough where people still fear who he is.
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck. And to get to that kind of level, right? I mean, or let's say pre-Weinstein. I mean, you said finance and networking wasn't really together, right? So maybe you had finance and you had networking separately, and then he kind of like brought it all together. So how was it before him, and then how did it make him be so special in this industry?
I mean, it's not that it didn't exist before him. It was the fact that he was one of those people who managed to do it outside of the studio system, where previously you had to be a big, like Paramount, you had to be like a Fox Studios, you had to be one of those big boys surrounded by the big industry machine, and then everything just naturally fell in line because you are buying into the credibility of those big name brands. Whereas he's one of those first go-to independent producers who was able to kind of wheel and deal and sort of maneuver and then get that going. And so what you then have is the benefit of having someone who's outside of the system is that he's willing to take some risks, where the creatives go, great, there's a guy who's willing to give me money to make a film that I could never make within the studio system, aka Quentin Tarantino, right? And then you've also got, on the other hand, the guys who have the money going, oh, I'm not just giving it to another company, I get to have these actual one-on-one conversations, and I have someone who can guarantee me access to these stars as well, because at the end of the day, the money that I'm giving, it might make $1, it might make $2, it might make $0, but for the money that I'm giving, I would love to have a photo op, I'd love to have a dinner, I'd love to be able to schmooze with some of these creatives. And this is a guy outside of the system who says, whatever your desires are, I can make that happen. And for want of a better word, he was really, really, really good at that. And so what people thought was, I'd like to kind of feed the beast a little bit. And of course, he's like, yeah, bring it. Let's make this happen. And here's the thing. And I know this is somewhat controversial, so I have to be mindful of what I say. He, for all of his misgivings and misdeeds, was still a brilliant producer. And there has been in recent times a conversation of how do we draw the line between the artist and his personal life, or her personal life. Where do we draw that line? Like, he's really good at his art, but in order for him to be really good at his art, he clearly has some issues he has to work through. Like your Kevin Spacey's. He's really good at his art. He clearly is a man in severe need of therapy and some intervention. Where do you draw that line?
People in that industry do seem to be, I'm not generalizing, and I'm not pointing out to anybody specific either, but you know, to be very artistic, it always seems like there's something, you know, on the polar end of that as well, right? To keep that balance, you know, whether it be, you know, the person's like, let's say, I don't know, like bisexual, or you know, they have, you know, some mental problems, going through severe depression or something, to kind of balance that out. I mean, do you find that a lot in this industry?
Well, I mean, being an artist myself, being someone who works a lot with artists, I would be the first person to say that the people who gravitate most to the arts are people who are broken. And broken by, in many ways, the societal definition of broken. In many ways, these people are, if I were to steal a term from Japanese art, they're like kintsugi kind of thing. They're broken, but they have like these beautiful golden streaks in them, and they are fully whole in their own way. And in fact, they're more humans than humans. And because they're broken in that sense, they're more prone to expression. They're more prone to being unfiltered. They're more prone to being uncensored. There's a saying, the artist is meant to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And what you have is, in a world that is driven on repression, suppression, and non-expression, an artist is someone who is desperately trying to do anything but these three things. And so what you're going to have is you're going to attract more of the crazies. You're going to attract more of the people who say, I don't want to be censored. I don't want to be filtered. I have something I want to say. And where do you go, okay, how do I help you channel this, but do it in a safe, appropriate manner? How do I help you channel this, but also make it palatable for these people who may not be ready for something like this? And so you're asking the artists to begin to be mindful of their message, but also be mindful of practicing self-care. Otherwise, they burn out really, really quick. And there's any number of artists who have burnt out. And then you're also asking an audience who has been fed a diet of repression, suppression, non-expression to go, are you willing to have your eyes and ears open to something that you may not be ready for? Are you willing to hear things that you perhaps would prefer not to? Are you willing to confront issues or have your life reflected back to you on stage or on screen in a way that maybe isn't so pretty and nice and polite. And it's a very fine line constantly for both the artist and the audience to tread. Yeah.
Interesting.
Future Design Podcast.